8. Arrival. The train that had brought the Zhivago family was still on a siding behind several other trains that screened it from the station, yet they had a feeling that their connection with Moscow, which till now had remained unbroken, snapped that morning, that it had come to an end. Here began another territory, a different, provincial world, which had a center of gravity of its own. Here people were closer together than in the capitals. Although the station area was cleared of civilians and surrounded by Red Army units, passengers for the local trains managed in some unaccountable way to get to the tracks, to infiltrate, as we would say today. They had already crammed the cars, thronging in the open sliding doors, and they walked back and forth along the train and stood in small groups on the embankment. All of them, without exception, were acquainted. They waved and called out as soon as they caught sight of each other, and they exchanged greetings as they passed. Their speech and dress, their food and manners, were all a little different from those of people in the capitals. How do they earn their living? The doctor wondered. What were their interests and their material resources? How did they cope with the difficulties of the times? How did they evade the laws? All these questions were soon answered in the most vivid way. 2. Escorted by the sentry who dragged his rifle after him or used it as a walking stick, the doctor went back to his carriage. It was a sultry day. The hot sun beat down on the rails and the roofs of the cars. The black puddles of oil on the ground blazed with a yellow shimmer, like gold leaf. The sentry's rifle butt plowed a furrow in the sand. It clinked against the ties. The weather has settled, he was saying. Time for the spring sowing oats, wheat, millet, it's the best time. It's too early for the buckwheat, though. Where I come from we sow the buckwheat on the feast of Akolina. I'm not from these parts, I come from Morshansk, in the Tambov government. Comrade doctor, if it wasn't for this here civil war and this plague of a counter-revolution, do you think I'd be wasting my time in strange parts at this season? The class war has run between us like the black cat of discord, and just look at what it's doing. 3. Hands stretched out of the carriage to help him up. Thanks, I can manage. Yuri Androvich hoisted himself into the car, and after regaining his balance embraced his wife. At last. Thank God, it's ended well, she said. Actually, we knew you were all right. What do you mean, you knew? We knew everything. How? The sentries told us. How could we have stood it otherwise? As it is, father and I nearly went out of our minds. There he is, he's fast asleep. You can't wake him, sleeping like a log after all. The excitement. There are several new passengers, I'll introduce you in a moment, but listen to what everybody's talking about. They're all congratulating you on your lucky escape. Here he is, she said suddenly, turning and introducing her husband over her shoulder to one of the new passengers who was hemmed in by the crowd at the back of the freight car. Samdeviatov, the stranger introduced himself, raising his soft hat over other people's heads and pushing his way forward through the press of bodies. Samdeviatov, thought the doctor. With a name like that he ought to have come straight out of an old Russian ballad, complete with a bushy beard, a smock, and a studded belt. But he makes you think of the local arts club, with his graying curls, moustache, goatee. Well, did Strelnikov give you a fright? Said Sam Deviatov. Tell the truth. No. Why? We had an interesting talk. Certainly he has a powerful personality. I should think so. I've got some idea of what he's like. He's not from these parts. He's one of you Moscow people. Like all our newfangled things. They too are imported from the capital. We wouldn't have thought of them ourselves. Yurochka, this is Anfim Efimovich. He knows everything, Antonina Alexandrovna said. He's heard about you and about your father, and he knew my grandfather. He knows everyone, absolutely everyone. I suppose you must have met the schoolteacher, Antipova. She slipped in casually, and Sam Deviatov replied just as casually. What about Antipova? Yuri Androvich heard this exchange but did not say anything, and his wife went on. Anfim Efimovich is a Bolshevik. Be on your guard, Yurochka. You must watch your tongue when he is around. Really? I'd never have thought so. I'd have taken him for an artist of some sort. My father kept an inn, said Sam Deviatov. He had 7 troikas on the road. But I went to the university, and it's true that I'm a social democrat. Listen to what Anfim Efimovich told me, Yurochka, and by the way, if you don't mind my saying so, Anfim Efimovich, your name is a real tongue twister. So, listen, Yurochka, we've been terribly lucky. We can't change it. Uriatan part of the town is on fire and the bridge has been blown up. You can't get through. Our train will be switched to another line, and that line happens to be just the one we need to get to Torfianaya. Isn't it wonderful? We don't have to change and lug all our stuff from one station to another. On the other hand, we'll be shunted back and forth for hours before we really start off. Anfim Efimovich told me all that. 4. Antonina Alexandrovna was right. Cars were coupled and uncoupled, and the train was shifted endlessly from one congested line to another where other trains blocked its way into the open country. The town lay in the distance, partly hidden by the rolling countryside. Only now and then did its roofs, the chimneys of its factories, and the crosses on its belfries emerge above the horizon. One of its suburbs was on fire. The smoke drifted across the sky looking like a gigantic horse's mane blowing in the wind. The doctor and Sam Deviatov sat on the floor of the freight car, their legs dangling over the side. Sam Deviatov kept pointing into the distance and explaining what they saw to Yuri Androvich. Every now and then the train would jerk noisily and drown his voice, and he would lean across, bringing his mouth close to the doctor's ear and repeat what he had said, shouting himself hoarse. That's a movie house, Thegiant, they've set on fire. The cadets were holding it, though they'd surrendered earlier. Otherwise, the fighting isn't over yet. You see those black dots on the belfry? Those are our people, sniping at the Czechs. I can't see a thing. How can you see them at such a distance? That's the artisans' quarter, Kokriki, burning over there. Kolodievo, the shopping center, is farther on. I'm interested because our inn is there. Luckily, it's only a small fire, it hasn't spread. So far the center has remained intact. What did you say? I can't hear you. I said the center of the town, the cathedral, the library. Our name, Sam Deviatov, is a garbled Russian form of Sandonate. We're supposed to be descended from the Demidovs. I still can't hear. I said Sam Deviatov is a form of San Donato. They say we are a branch of the Demidov family, the Princess Demidov San Donato. But it may be just a family legend. This place here is called Spurka's Dell. It's full of summer houses and amusement parks. Strange name, isn't it? Before them extended a field crisscrossed by branch tracks. Telegraph poles strode away to the horizon like giants in 7-league boots, and the broad winding ribbon of a highway competed in beauty with the tracks. It vanished beyond the horizon, reappeared in a broad arc at a turn, and again vanished. That's our famous highway. It runs right across Siberia. The convicts used to sing songs about it. Now it's the operational base of the partisans. You'll like it here, you know, it's not at all bad. You'll get used to it. You'll get to like the curiosities of the town. Our water pumps, for instance. The women queue up for water at the intersections, it's their open-air club through the winter. We are not going to live in town. We're going to Varikino. I know. Your wife told me. Still, you'll be coming into town on business. I guessed who your wife was the moment I saw her. She's the living image of Kruger eyes, nose, forehead just like her grandfather. Everyone here remembers him. There were round red oil tanks in the field, and large advertisements on wooden billboards. One of them caught the doctor's eye twice. It bore the inscription, Moreau and Vetchinkin, mechanical seeders, threshing machines. That was a good firm. Their agricultural machinery was first-rate. I can't hear. What did you say? A good firm, I said. Can you hear? A good firm. They made agricultural machinery. It was a corporation. My father was a stockholder. I thought you said he kept an inn. He did. That didn't mean he couldn't have stock. Very shrewd investments he made, too. He had money in the giant. You sound as if you were proud of it. Of my father being shrewd. Of course I am. But what about your socialism? Good Lord. What has that got to do with it? Why on earth should a man, because he is a Marxist, be a drivelling idiot? Marxism is a positive science, a theory of reality, a philosophy of history. Marxism a science? Well, it's taking a risk, to say the least, to argue about that with a man who hardly knows. However, Marxism is too uncertain of its ground to be a science. Sciences are more balanced, more objective. I don't know a movement more self-centered and further removed from the facts than Marxism. Everyone is worried only about proving himself in practical matters. And as for the men in power, they are so anxious to establish the myth of their infallibility that they do their utmost to ignore the truth. Politics doesn't appeal to me. I don't like people who don't care about the truth. Samdeviatov took the doctor's words for the fooling of a witty eccentric. He listened with a smile, and did not contradict him. The train was still being shunted. Every time it reached the go signal, an elderly woman with a milk can tied to her belt, who was on duty at the switch, shifted her knitting, bent down, and moved the lever, sending the train back. As it slowly rolled away, she sat up and shook her fist at it. Samdeviatov took this personally. Why does she do that? He wondered. Her face is familiar. Can it be Tuntseva? No, I don't think it can be Glasha. She looks too old. Anyway, what has she got against me? I suppose, what with Mother Russia in the throes of her upheavals and the railways in a muddle, the poor old thing is having a bad time, so she is taking it out on me. Oh, to hell with her. Why should I rack my brains about her? At long last the woman waved her flag, shouted something to the engineer, and led the train past the signals, out into the open. But as the 14th car sped by, she stuck her tongue out at the two men chatting on the floor, who had got on her nerves. Once again Samdeviatov wondered. 5. When the outskirts of the burning town, the round oil tanks, telegraph poles, and advertisements had vanished in the distance, giving way to a landscape of woods and low hills.